everyone, it's Yves from EOS Nation here. I'm going to be doing videos every couple of days to give you an idea of what's going on and to give you a summary of the discussions that are taking place in the EOS community. We realize that there's a lot of information being discussed. It takes considerable time to keep up with all the discussion, and so we want to do this series so that you're aware of what's going on and so that we can provide you with the information so that you keep up to date without necessarily having to spend hours and hours reading Telegram channels. And today the video that I want to do is to discuss the action that was taken yesterday by the block producers to effectively freeze 7 accounts that were believed to have been phished, being victim of phishing attacks or scams. So to give you a little bit of background, we need to go back to what the role of a block producer is and kind of the role of different actors in the EOS ecosystem. So a block producer is effectively running the infrastructure that secures the network, that's producing the blocks. They're also responsible for creating content value creation for the community. And right now as well, they're the ones that are able to do specific things with the chain. For example, the event from yesterday, they're able to freeze accounts. This in the future is one of the features that EOS has developed, and the idea was I really want to have a chain where there is governance in place where we can prevent such things from happening, so that when there is something that happens where people are fallen or have fallen victim to phishing scams or their tokens might be at risk, that there are processes in place for this to be potentially put on a hold or on a pause, decisions to be made, and then restitution to the rightful token holders. Now, because the chain is only a couple of days old, the formal governance procedures are still not in place yet, and this is why we're left with what happened yesterday. So the block producers are effectively the executive branch on, just to kind of compare to terms that people are aware of. The block producers are somewhat of the executive branch, so they're voted in by the token holders. The token holders would be the constituents. They elect the block producers, and the block producers really are there to enact the decisions that they're being told to do. And generally they would be told to do these decisions by the EOS Core Arbitration Forum, so I'll refer to that as ECAF going forward. And ECAF is really the judicial branch, I guess that we could say. So they would be the fact finders. They would be the ones where if you have a claim, you submit to them. They do the background checks. They do all the fact finding to then determine to come up with a verdict. And then they would deliver the verdict to the block producers, and the block producers would effectively take action on that verdict, or whatever it may be. Now, because we're still early in the chain, what happened yesterday was that ECAF believes that they still don't have the authority to be, and they will be releasing a statement tonight in a couple of hours, but they believed that they still didn't have the authority to fully be the judicial branch per se of the EOS ecosystem. And part of that comes back to the constitution that we have in place and the wording that was used when the constitution was put in place. So when we launched the chain, the idea was that this was going to be a draft constitution and that we would be holding a referendum in the first 90 days of the mainnet being launched, so that we could put in place the constitution voted by, especially certain articles in the constitution need to be redone and revisited, and we wanted the community members to be able to participate in that. But we also wanted to ensure that we had something on day one. And ECAF felt like, or feels like, they didn't have the authority to be the legislative branch. And so through a community initiative that I'm sure you've heard of called EOS 911, multiple token holders have submitted their information to EOS 911 and to ECAF to say, hey, we've been victim of phishing attacks or scamming attacks, and our tokens are now in jeopardy. And the way it works right now, especially because we're in the beginning of the chain, there's a 72-hour unstaking period. And what was presented yesterday to the block producers was accounts that research had been done, and it did seem to indicate that the evidence seemed to indicate that those accounts had been breached, or that they had been potentially stolen, and that the evidence was pretty strong. ECAF agreed to this, that the evidence seemed to be pointing that those were indeed accounts that have fallen victim, but that they themselves, because they didn't have the authority, they couldn't give the ruling to the block producers to enact that decision. So the block producers got on a call, and it was supposed to be a routine call, but it ended up being a 3.5-hour call, doing the back and forth on, okay, what can we do? So the block producers had two options effectively. One was to do nothing, which effectively is an action. So you're basically telling the token holders, we're pretty much aware that that there's enough evidence to indicate that your tokens are effectively being taken away by somebody else, and once the unstaking period comes through, it's possible that the people that have taken your tokens will now be able to release them in the ecosystem, sell them, whatever, do something with them, and you'll never see them again. By doing nothing, that was somewhat of the result of what could happen, and this has an unfortunate effect as well. So if we've promised, or if basically the ecosystem has promised to the token holders that we'd be providing a chain that is able to restitute when harm is done, and we're not able to do that right away when the chain launches, it sends a really bad signal. And so for the health of the ecosystem, this could have been an issue. The other alternative was that the block producers step in and they freeze the accounts in question after having reviewed enough evidence and determined that indeed, most likely this is what happened. These accounts have been breached, and if we don't do anything, then these tokens might be released in the wild. But if we do something, at least we give a little bit more time for ECAF to stand up, to be able to render a verdict, and then to let us know whether or not we should unfreeze and or who are the rightful token holders. Now, these two options have had significant, whether you look at them, whichever you look at, they had significant concerns at play. So if you let it go, then the reputation of the chain might be going down because we promised something and we're not able to deliver on that. However, by taking action, the block producers were indeed, in fact, taking all the liability on themselves. So that was the difficult decision to make, was to actually come in and try to save the token holders, knowing that most likely, if they didn't save the token holders, that those tokens would be gone. So the first thing they did is, first of all, this required a unanimous decision, because if any one of the block producers didn't include those blacklisted accounts into the chain, then it would not have worked. So everybody needed to be on par with this. Now, by doing this, though, right away what they did is they immediately filed a claim against themselves, so that when ECAF comes into play and they do have the authority and they're fully set up, they will be able to review the decision that was taken by the block producers. So it was somewhat of they took the hard road by doing this, but either road, so if they had not done this, we'd be having a different conversation today. Whichever decision would have been taken, it would have been very, very difficult. Personally, and EOS Nation believes that they made the right decision. We showed the world that we promised a governed blockchain, and and that's what we're doing. We're effectively governing the blockchain and ensuring that the token holders are able to have life, liberty, and property protected, and that's what they were able to do. And again, it's very important to note that these tokens are simply frozen. These accounts have not been taken away. There's nothing that's happened with these tokens. They're simply frozen. Now, what's going to happen in the next couple of hours or next couple of days is ECAF hopefully is going to stand up and be able to render a verdict on whether or not that decision was effectively good. And so there's a couple of things that we need to see in the next couple of days. We really need to encourage, and this is what EOS is doing, we need to, as much as possible, help ECAF stand up. That's number one. Number two thing, we're actively working day and night in order to stand up the referendum system and be able to vote, for example, on constitutional changes going forward. And the third thing that we're doing that we believe would definitely help is from now on, we should have mechanisms to live stream all the meetings so that when people want to participate in these meetings, they can see the live stream, such as what we did with the go, no go vote to launch the chain. Now, this has there's particularities with that because sometimes critical bugs are being discussed. So the idea would be, right now what we're pushing forward is that everything would be live streamed, and then if the block producers need to go in camera in order to discuss critical bug issues, because that can't really be published, then you could give the information out to the wrong people. They would go in camera for a certain period of time, and then they would come back out of in camera, and then at least everybody, all the token holders would be able to see, they'd see what led up to that and everything, and they'd be able to see the thought process that goes in these decisions. These decisions are not taken lightly. This was a very, very difficult decision for the block producers to take. EOS Nation was on the call. We were part of those discussions, and we realized that the decision that was taken was not an easy one, but we do believe that it was the right one. It was a right one for all the token holders and for the governance of the chain, for the actual health and strength of the chain itself. This action needed to occur. So again, we'll be doing a couple of these every couple of days, and we'll keep you informed on decisions that are affecting you, the token holders. So take care. Peace.